Hey, what's up, guys? You're listening to the It Takes a Village podcast. I'm Ashley, your host. This is where the struggles are real, the callings are heavy, the kids are sticky. We come together because it takes a village, and this is your tribe. Hey, what's up, guys? Long time no talk. I'm excited to be back on the podcast. This is my first episode back in the seat, and I can function without vomiting, and I can walk, and I can do things without vomiting because that is what the last, I don't know, like 3 months up until after maybe like April. That's all I was doing. So if you didn't know, if you don't keep up with my Instagram or saw some of my posts, I went down pretty hard in January, and it was like the nausea was creeping on me, and then all of a sudden the next day I was like down hard, and I knew I've had Hyperemesis Gravidarum before, and I knew as soon as it hit me, that's what it was. I called into my job, and I'm so blessed that they understood and that, they were very supportive of me. And I was like, I am not going to be in. And I can't tell you the next time I will be in because I've done this before. This is my third time going through this. And so, yeah, that's where I've been. I've been at home in bed, literally doing nothing, because when you have hyperemesis, at least for me, my experience with it is that I cannot function whatsoever. I can't look at the TV because the bright lights, the brightness of it, the movement, hearing all the talking from the people on the TV every little bit of that made me nauseous. And then also, I was vomiting 24/7. So now that I'm back, the first order of business that I wanted to have with you guys is how to advocate for yourself if you have hyperemesis, and some things that I've learned along the way. Number one is that when you feel like you're off and you're vomiting 5 times or more a day, this is more than morning sickness. If you are noticing that your sense of smell is extremely heightened, and I mean abnormally extremely heightened, and you can't keep food down, you can't keep liquids in, you feel like you need to speak up. The thing that I've learned the most, having been through this 3 times, is that you will expect your OBGYN to know what to do. You will expect them to be able to support you, and I think we expect this in a very minimal kind of way. So we expect them to do it without us asking or advocating for ourselves, but it is far from that. What I've learned the most is that you have to stick up for yourself. You have to speak up for yourself. You have to say, this is what I need, even though you think that it's their job to tell you what you need, because it's not going to happen. And sometimes it doesn't ever happen if you don't do those things. So, for example, when I was sick, my doctor, my OBGYN, has been through this with me before. She wasn't a part of my first pregnancy, but she was my second, and I had it, every time. So she's been down this road with me once before. I knew that she knows what hyperemesis is. And some of you guys will have experiences where your OBGYN has no idea. My first pregnancy, my OBGYN only prescribed me one or two medicines, and then after that, she couldn't understand the concept that I was still nauseated. For her and her suggestions, it was like, drink ginger, take small sips of liquid. And if you have hyperemesis, you know that that's basically like telling somebody that a hurricane is like little drops of rain. And that's exactly how it was. And she just didn't get it. She wasn't educated on it. She had no experience in it. And if you are in a situation like that, you immediately need to change your doctor. If you know you have hyperemesis, you've looked it up, you say, I am matching all of these symptoms and my doctor is not doing anything for me, you need to switch right away, because otherwise you're going to have a very long, hard, mentally, physically, and of all the things, it's going to be extremely hard and exhausting and dangerous for your body. Okay, so back to my story. My OBGYN with this one, I told her what was going on immediately. She saw me the next day, um, and prescribed me with the first medicine. It did nothing, you guys. So she didn't know unless I told her that it was doing nothing. The next medicine did nothing for me as well. What she didn't say voluntarily was, hey, you can take, if they're two separate medicines, you could try both of them at the same time. So I have to advocate for myself. And sometimes it's hard if you're new to this because you don't know what you're doing. You don't know what to ask. You don't know what to say. So that's why I'm telling you guys, you need to ask if you've tried one medicine, it didn't work, and they prescribe you another one and it's not working, if you could try a combination of the two. I know for one of my meds, it was like take one in the morning, take one at night, and the other one was like take every 6 hours. So I was able to do both of those. Now, both of those still did not work for me, but see, it's the thing with hyperemesis is you don't know what's going to work for your body until you try it, and not everything that worked for somebody else is going to work for you. So I then called her again, said it's not working. I'm still vomiting. I can't keep anything down, all these things. What is the next option? What is my next medicine option? And all this time, they never sought me out. I had to seek them out and say, no, I need something else that's not working. I got a third one and it helped a little bit. And this is by no means the cheapest thing to go through ever because, all these medicines are not cheap. So you have to be aware of that, and know that you just have to do what you have to do for your body. The next thing, when those medicines weren't working, I know from experience, like I said, the last time I was put on a pump and that gave my body relief. What I remembered from the last time is that I was put on a Zofran pump and it didn't help me. They then put me on a Reglan pump and that was able to kind of lower the intensity of it at least so I can sort of function more. So right out of the gate, I can say those things and I can say I want to be put on the pump. I want home health care because for one, when you're that sick, going to and from the doctor is almost impossible. So if you didn't know that that's an option for you, it is. And most of the time, your insurance will approve it if your doctor says that it's necessary. What your doctor has to prove for it to be necessary for insurance purposes is that you've tried all the other routes. And it sucks because they have to be able to document that you tried, this prescription, this prescription, this prescription, which then grants you the ability for insurance to say, okay, you can now have the pump. We understand that you tried all of the routes and nothing worked. So you do have to go through that, which I kind of knew that was going to happen. Meanwhile, you feel absolutely awful. You don't want to talk to people, much less call your doctor. And talking makes you nauseated, which you often throw up if you're talking too much. And so it's something that you think would be easy to do because you need it so badly. But when you feel so badly, you don't want to bother with it. But it's absolutely necessary unless you can speak to, your husband and your husband can advocate on your behalf and your doctor's office knows your husband is advocating for you, and they accept his advice and him, speaking on your behalf. Otherwise, it's going to be you, and you have to call and you have to say, I need this. I need to see if you can help me with this. I need home health care. I need to, you need to set it up for me. And then when you get home health care, it's going to be the same thing. You're going to have to advocate for yourself and say, this isn't working. I need, what can we do with my levels, the amount that's been given, all these things. So just like me, when I had the Zofran pump, it wasn't working, which it didn't before. Not only that, but like the first day my IV fluids was put in on the same day my pump was put in, and my vein blew because I was dehydrated, which when you are on these pumps and you're dehydrated, it makes you feel awful. So it's this horrible system. It's not perfect. I know with my specific home health, it was that I can be on the IV fluids for 3 days with the pump, and the hope is that your body starts to hydrate while the pump gives you the medication that will allow you to take in the hydration. But since my vein blew, my body didn't get that chance, and so I did a downward spiral, and it was awful. At which point, then I had to go to the hospital because your home health care can only re-stick you like 3 times. And because I was so dehydrated, my nurse could not re-stick my IV fluids into my body. And so for me to get hydrated, I had to go to the hospital. There are hydration fluid centers, which are great. And if you can find them that have fluids for pregnancy that also have Zofran in them, that would be amazing, because Zofran through the IV, personally for me, made a huge difference. I could take Zofran orally all day long and it not do anything but make me sick. But IV intravenously, it helped tremendously. That's another thing, is that you are going to have to tell those around you, your family members, your husband, yourself, that when you feel bad enough, you do need to take yourself to the hospital or to a smaller emergency center that is familiar with hyperemesis and can give you IV fluids. I think I went to the hospital 4 times while on medication, and even while I was on my pump, because you just get so dehydrated. And like I said, when you're on these medications, whether it be orally or through the pump, when you're dehydrated, it makes you feel worse, even if you're taking these medications. And the medications, I feel like, make it even worse because you're dehydrated. They have an adverse reaction when you're dehydrated. Obviously, I'm not a doctor, so I can't, you can't hold me at my word on that, but that's just my experience. And you have to take yourself in, even though you don't want to, even though the ride is going to be awful. You're probably going to throw up all the way there. You hate being there. You got to do it, and it helps you feel better. I know that like a day or two, for that day that I would get hydrated, I would just pound water, and then the next day, because usually it was the day that I was at the hospital, and then the day after that I'd be able to take in liquids. Then after that, the Zofran would taper off, and then I wouldn't be able to do that anymore. So take advantage of that. Give that to yourself. I know that it's expensive. I know that it's not ideal to be in the hospital so many times, but when you have hyperemesis, you kind of want to go ahead and give in to that idea that you're probably going to be there a few times. So hyperemesis is a very rare pregnancy disease. I think the statistics right now are showing that it only happens to 1.5% of pregnant women, which is really low. But somehow I've come across many women who have either been there, currently there, or knew somebody that was in the same situation. And so you may be listening to this and thinking like, this doesn't apply to me. But the chances are you're going to know somebody, or you're going to know somebody that knows somebody. And having this information is going to help them, because when it's their first time, especially, you have no idea what you're doing. And you have no idea until it hits you hard that it's something different than morning sickness. So I just talked about basically handling hyperemesis with meds and advocating for yourself in that way. But there's a whole other aspect that this time around, or each time that I've had it, has gotten lighter and lighter, and that's the mental heaviness of it and the relational strain that it puts on you, especially with your family or with your spouse, because if it's the first time, they don't understand. They've never been through it. They can't physically or mentally really relate to you, because it's just so intense. It's not something like a cold that you can describe the symptoms to somebody and they can get it, they can understand it. This is heavier than that. It's intense. It's more intense, and it doesn't make sense. Like, the insane intensity that my smell was at was like insane. And I could not make people understand why I could smell the weirdest things and like the smallest things that they couldn't even imagine smelling. I could, like, my husband, I could smell him from like 3 rooms away. If anything was even cooked or heated up to the slightest degree, I could smell it. Being touched, even the littlest touches possible, made me nauseated. Like, there were just like crazy things that didn't make any sense. I hated the way my own body felt, like my skin. I hated feeling my skin. Showers were the worst. I hated that because I had to actually touch my skin. My face, I hated touching my face. It's just like so random, and people don't get that. I know, like, the first time around, family members, would suggest the ginger ale, the crackers, like eat small bites of things, never get up on an empty stomach, all those things, because they couldn't understand what I was really going through. And that actually makes it really isolating because that doesn't apply to you, and yet they keep giving you this advice like they know better, like you should be doing better, but you're not listening to their advice. And so the best thing that I have ever done was to, one, just go through it, and you just ignore it. Like, I think the first time I had to just ignore everybody's messages. I didn't respond. Luckily my husband would advocate on my behalf and say, like, no, like, she's really sick. And they got it, and then, letting them see how sick I really was. Sometimes it takes them to physically see you, because there's no way that you have hyperemesis and you don't look extremely ill. Or them being around you for a minute and them being like, okay, yeah, it's for real. Which is sad, but I don't know. So letting your family know, there's resources like hyperemesis.org is the best place. That it has a section for families, to explain to families what it is, what you're feeling, how to approach you, how not to offend you, because it's the most common thing for me. And this is another, like, tip or helping thing for you if you are going through this or know somebody, is to find a community. For me, the Facebook groups were not helpful because everybody was on there commenting about their hyperemesis and how bad they feel and how awful it was. And it just made me more depressed, to be honest, because there was more of like everybody was complaining. There was an Instagram account that I did follow this time, and I would occasionally look at it to remind myself and make myself feel less alone in this, because other women are going through this around the world at the same time as you are. Um, with less of a Debbie Downer, like, it was a more of like, this is where I'm at. I just feel like, for me, it was a healthier sense of community, without being bogged down with all the heaviness of like what everybody else was, or like I don't know, it's just different for me. But that was the Instagram account called Hyperemesis underscore Gravidarum underscore sucks. And that was really helpful. I got to see women who were celebrating getting over it, or were posting that they were in the hospital getting IV fluids, and, or that they were worse off than me and had to get a PICC line and all these things. And so, but the majority of their posts were not so much as, like, I'm suffering, I'm, like, but like, this is where I'm at. And it was more relatable and less like, I don't know, it was just less negative in some way for me. So I think finding your community, and again, you can search hyperemesis on Facebook, and a ton of Facebook groups will come up. You can search hyperemesis on Instagram, and you'll see accounts come up. You can go to hyperemesis.org, and they will link you to forums, and you can get connected there. I highly recommend that, because there are women in there that are ahead of it, further along than you in it. They can share, like, how they told their husband that they need more help, or how they told their family that they need more help, and how, like, what medicines they're trying, so you know which medicines to ask your doctor for, or that you might want to try. um I think that finding that community is extremely helpful, in this process, because it is so isolating. Okay, so I've talked about helping yourself medically, advocating for yourself at the doctor's office, finding community. There is a very awkward part of this that I'm going to bring up, because it's for real, and I've seen other women bravely post about it, and so I want to go there. Is that when you are feeling so sick, like, imagine having food poisoning every day for months on end, 24 hours, like, even when you have food poisoning within a 24-hour period, I guarantee you're not being intimate with your spouse. So this is where I'm going. So if you're uncomfortable already, you know, flip the switch, or if there's kids in the car, um, you're going to have that conversation with your husband, because you're going to feel like you don't want to be touched. You don't even want to touch yourself. You're like, I mean, you don't want to touch your skin. You don't like the way you feel. You normally, like, you're just so nauseated constantly that even the slightest movement is like can set you off. You have a bucket by your bed. You feel disgusting. You feel yucky, like internally, externally. And so you have to have that conversation with your spouse, with your partner, with your husband, about what does our intimacy look like, because for you, it's going to be non-existent. Like, you're not even going to worry about it. It's not even going to be on your mind. You're not going to care about it. You don't need it. You don't want it. But obviously for your partner, um, it's something that has to be addressed, right? They have needs, they have wants. And so that's kind of a discussion of what do we do in this time, to stay connected physically, mentally, emotionally. What do we do during this time to make up for the lack of sexual intimacy? And then you're going to have to figure that out, and what's acceptable to you guys, what is doable, how you're going to work it out. What do you care that he doesn't do? Do you not want him to touch you? Do you have a certain time frame where you feel sort of okay, where you can try to be intimate together? Those are that is like the awkward conversation that I don't think anybody hardly talks about, but is for real, and it has an effect on your relationship, because you go from having a normal intimacy level to all of a sudden, like, you could care less and you feel awful because you're spending, like, your most intimate relationship right now is with the toilet. So I think that's an important thing to think about and to come up with a plan together. I know my husband and I did, so it was really helpful to do that, and we got on the same page about our feelings and where we were and our expectations, and that way there wasn't anything um, you know said or approached with, or like we didn't assume the wrong thing about each other. And so I think just being on the same page in that aspect is good. If I sound like I'm out of breath constantly, you guys, it's because I am. There's like no space in my belly or in my diaphragm for air right now. So I'm like, and talking a lot and being prego and having a huge belly, like, you're just going to hear me heavy breathing. Sorry, guys. That's just kind of my life right now. But so I think those are like the most important tips: advocating for yourself medically, community, explaining to your family, getting on the same page with your spouse, your partner, your husband. And then last but not least is being completely honest with your workplace, if you do work, with your friends, and being honest about what you can do, what you can't do, what your expectations are. Believe me, this is not the time to push your limits. You also need to be able to ask for help, which I know for a lot of us is really hard to do on a normal basis, much less when we feel really crappy. But you're going to have to ask. We had to ask for help with food. Like, that was a huge, huge blessing. And those that brought or gave us gift cards, or like it was like an automatic gift card, for not automatic, what am I thinking? Electronic. Oh my gosh. Electronic gift cards for like Uber Eats and Grubhub, and places where my husband could just order something on his phone and it be delivered to our house. That was the biggest blessing ever, because it didn't have to be cooked in my house, so the smells didn't bother me. My kids got taken care of. Like, my husband became like a full-time parent, like working, running them to all the extracurriculars, having to do laundry, clean. I literally didn't like nothing, but survive during this time. And so anything, like, you're just gonna have to ask for help. I know the time my pregnancy before this, with my son, I had help. We had a babysitter during the day for our oldest, and then we had my mother-in-law coming to relieve her, and then she would cook dinner. And then, my husband would come home and he would do the laundry and he would do bedtime and bath time. And so, like, you have to figure out, and you just have to gather, and ask for help. Let people in your home, they're going to see you look like crap. I, most of the time, laid in bed and had my door closed because I felt uncomfortable people seeing me, and I was getting up to get sick a lot. And so, um, you just have to like let people in the mess, and um, let them pray for you, let them give, let them serve, let them pick up your kids, like just let them in because that's the only way you're going to survive is by saying yes to all the things you would normally say no to. And then later on, you can thank them. You can do things, write a thank you card for them later on, or, if you feel like you have to reciprocate, um, just know that there are times where people need each other, and that's like life. Like, you're not being a burden, and people do truly love to give and to help and to support. And so let them do that for you. Okay, so those were just my tips. I know not all of you guys are going to be able to relate because not all of you, luckily, are going to have hyperemesis, but I wanted to share some tips, some ways you can advocate for yourself. If you know somebody, like I said, if a friend of a friend ends up having it, the things to remember that I want to end this episode with is that you are not causing the condition. Like, there is nothing that you did wrong, there's nothing that you could have done. We are just the lucky 1% that has, you know, this hormone that makes it just go bonkers. And it's not your lifestyle, it's not you, it's, and then also, if you're like me, it was really hard to succumb to medication. I don't typically I don't even like to take Advil for my headaches. But when you have this, you have to reassure yourself and know that this is what's going to be best for your baby, because the alternative is dehydration. Um, like, really, really bad things can happen when you're having this dehydration. Tachycardia, abnormally fast heart rate is pretty common with hyperemesis, low amniotic fluid, stuff like that. And so you want to give yourself the grace of, there are many women, and I hope that they come up with, some other solutions, some alternatives, but I've tried every natural alternative there is, and it will not touch, like, not even a smidge, at least for me, hyperemesis. So if you're worried about the medications, I've had two beautiful children come out of it, and they are wonderful, and nothing is wrong with them, and they function great. And I'm just so blessed that because of medication, I was able to get through it. And this is one of those times where I feel like it's absolutely necessary for your body to be able to do that. And also, the last thing is that you're not Kate Middleton. I hate the way that they have portrayed her having hyperemesis, because we don't have a staff to make us look good, to support us like she did, where she has 24-hour nurses. I'm sure she has all these things, and we don't have that. And also, like myself, I had it every time I got pregnant. You may not be that way. You may get it the next time. I've heard of women who have gotten it the first time, not had it their second pregnancy, and then got it again their third. So it's kind of just luck of the draw, and you're just kind of rolling the dice every time you get pregnant. But that's kind of what it is. So I just wanted to share those few tips. I want you to walk away feeling empowered. Hopefully this helps, if you, like I said. And thank you guys for being patient with me while I was gone, while I was under a rock, trying to survive this pregnancy. So I'm looking forward to getting back in the routine, and I will catch you guys next time. Hey, what's up, guys? If you like what you've been hearing, make sure you rate or review our podcast on iTunes or whatever podcast app you're listening to, as well as sharing your favorite episodes with your friends, because as we know, it takes a village to survive motherhood, as well as the goodness of podcast and growing our podcast together. So I appreciate you as a listener. I hope you guys have an awesome day, and I thank you for all of your hours spent listening to our podcast. And I'm so excited and so grateful for you to be a part of our tribe.